Very nice to meet you guys.
Hey, Coach, Connor Morissette with USCFootball.com. Now that you've had some more time to be around the team, I know your scheme, you preach versatility, you want guys to do different things. Last year at UCLA, the front, the defensive line, that was clearly the strength of the defense. What do you think the strength of USC's defense will be going into next season, and how does that affect the X's and O's, how you're going to play schematically?
You know, it's kind of tough to tell until we actually get on the field in spring. You know, I do think this is a well-rounded team. You know, you look at some of the pieces that we have in the secondary that you like. You have some experience at inside backer, and then you have a lot of depth up front. As far as what's going to be the strength, you know, I think maybe like after like the first couple of weeks of spring, we'll have a better idea.
Okay, Antonio Morales from The Athletic. What were the specific traits you were looking for when building up the staff?
Really just versatility, experience, and good people. You know, I don't think I know all of our guys on staff. They're just as good as people as they are coaches. You have guys that have all types of experience. You have head coaching experience. You have coordinator experience. You have NFL experience. So I think it's a very diverse staff.
Lincoln mentioned, Luke Evans, Orange County Register. Lincoln mentioned that you had some, connection with Eric. Obviously, both having coached together with the Chargers. I mean, what was your vision for bringing him in, and how do you anticipate kind of working with him, as a co-coordinator, that sort of alignment?
Yeah, I worked with Eric for a year with the Chargers. He was a great coach. He was the assistant D-line coach. I was the quality control coach. And then he went to the Rams. I went to Houston, and we just stayed in touch. And I've been able to see him grow as a coach. I've been able to see some of the players he's developed, but then also see some of the things that they've done from a schematic standpoint. And, we're always looking to grow as a coach, but also grow our scheme. We always want to try to get it as good as we can get. And I just think getting a guy like Eric, who, again, has been a part of a completely different scheme, to now be able to get his ideas and stuff that he can add to it, I think is going to be awesome.
Scott Schrader with On3. When you were hired, reached out to some guys that played for you, just kind of get some feedback. And Kamari Ramsey was one, and then Liatu Latu was another at the Poly Bowl. And they basically just said when you first got to UCLA, you just basically said keep doing what you do. They said you kept things pretty simple, but I assume it probably was less simple than they made it out to be. But is your approach similar heading into USC here, year one, like it was in UCLA?
It is, yeah. We try to be creative with how we teach things, how we install things. We want it to be as simple as possible. And we want to make a little look like a lot. So something that we did in the spring, which we'll do the same thing here, is we moved very, very slow in spring. We installed very, very slow. We probably got half the playbook in spring. But it's about, in my opinion, just getting the basic fundamentals and just building the foundation from a schematic standpoint. That way it's easier to add on to the bricks involved. But yeah, in the spring, we moved very slow. The guys actually kind of got annoyed. They want us to go a little bit quicker, but I'm really big on this time of the year, just about getting it right. I'd much rather go too slow than too fast.
Coach, it seems like making a little look like a lot is a big part of NFL football right now. Just the best coaches are doing that. Who taught you that, and who did you learn from? Who are your influences who sort of taught you that?
It's tough. I've had a lot.
Yeah.
I'd say one of the biggest ones is Rex Ryan. I was fortunate enough to get the chance to play for him, get a chance to scout for him and coach. He was kind of my intro into the NFL, and I learned a lot of football from him. And I've learned from a lot of coordinators and head coaches since then, but I would say it all comes back to Rex, I'd say.
And why is that so important, making a little look like a lot?
I just think it makes it tough on an offense. It's the way the game's played is getting harder and harder for us on defense. And anything you can do to slow them down, whether it's slowing down their offensive line or making it tougher on their quarterback, I think can give us an edge.
Coach, Eric McKinney with WeAreSC. How much of an impact, if any, were you able to have on strength and conditioning, winter stuff, just directives of what you want there, and then practice structure too? How much input are you with that?
We've just been on the road recruiting, and now we're working on getting our installs together. We're actually going to have our first meeting with the players today to go over install 1. So we have not been a part of the strength and conditioning at all. And then as far as practice, we're going to start talking about practice now that we're getting closer to spring. And, we're definitely going to try to structure practice the best way we can to help the offense and defense.
Dan, Brian Young, Sports.com. I know you haven't practiced with the guys yet. Do you have a better sense for the personnel that you have, and do you identify some areas you think are real strengths on this roster?
I've got a chance to get a good feel for the guys. I'm trying to go into spring with an open mind just because I know that it's going to be a completely different defense, completely different scheme. Like even when I got to UCLA, there were guys that you didn't anticipate making the jumps that they did, and there were also guys that you kind of anticipated making that next jump that they didn't. So I think you kind of just have to see, like, how do these guys adapt to the scheme? And again, we're going to adapt the scheme to the guys as well. But I think once we can get out there after the first couple of weeks, we'll have a better idea.
Dan, how much impact or input did you have on structuring the defensive coaching staff and working with Lincoln? You know, did you suggest names? Was it a collaborative effort? How did that process?
It was a collaborative effort. There were some names that he brought to the table. There were some names I brought into the table. Everyone was interviewed a handful of times, and we went with who we felt like was the best staff.
And with talking about, you know, just Kamari and John coming from UCLA, you know, does that give you just a little bit of confidence, know that you have some sort of vets or key pieces of your defense from last year, and that you can
It does. You know, last year I was, you know, the defense was brand new to absolutely everybody. It was brand new to the entire coaching staff. It was brand new to all the players. So to have two players who play critical positions, you know, those are positions where communication is key, and knowing the defense is key. So I think having those two pieces is going to help jumpstart this spring.
There's a lot of experience in the coaching room with you. What jumps out so far about how you guys have been able to communicate and work together?
It's a lot of really good guys, and it's a lot of guys that put the team before their ego. You know, everyone in that room has had success doing things their own way at their own schools or their own NFL teams. So to take guys with that level of experience to come into a room, and we have to come up with one way, and it's not going to be everyone's way, but I think everyone's been doing a really good job as far as just putting the team before ego, and we're just trying to find the best way regardless of whose idea it is.
Coach, you installed a new defense at UCLA last season. What did that experience teach you that you can apply and maybe do a better job at USC this spring and this fall?
It taught me a lot. You know, it was my first time working with college kids, and the one thing that I learned fast is that you can't assume anything. You know, in the NFL, there's a certain level that you just assume that the guys know. You know, in college, you don't know these kids' background at all. So I feel like it made me a way better teacher because you really do have to assume that these kids don't know any football at all, and you have to coach the room as if they don't, because there's probably someone in the room who doesn't.
Coach, you obviously only at UCLA 1 year, you guys been making improvements, seemed like you on the right track there. What was it about USC that kind of made you want to win that instead of
You know, just a school like this with the history, the tradition, you know, the great players and coaches who have come through here, to get a chance to be a part of a program like this, going into the Big Ten with the challenge again of improving the defense, was just an opportunity that I felt like I couldn't pass up.
Tukney with the LA Times. Lincoln was talking about the importance of development, especially with these assistant coaches. Just how big is that, especially for you guys as a staff, and just kind of in the scope of college football, making sure you guys are good developers?
It's huge, you know, especially when you're recruiting high school kids. You know, you get these kids out of high school, they're nothing like they're going to be when they leave and go to the NFL. So the development's huge, but it's not just the physical development. I think it's the mental aspect of it too. You know, I think expose them to as many things that prepare them for the NFL as we can, from a schematic standpoint, from the way we teach, the way we install, the way we walk through. The more we can do to these kids, the earlier, I think, the better.
What about this staff stands out to you about, you know, we're good at developing because of this? Like, what quality makes a good developer?
The quality, I'll say, makes a good developer. I say all of our staff, they're super detailed. All of them, again, I keep on saying this, but it comes back to being good people. A lot of it comes down to trust. You know, a lot of development is trust between the player and the coach. And that's something that, even though we haven't spent a lot of time with these guys on the field yet, you can kind of see just between the guys being up here, you can see the trust already starting to get built. But I would say that's one of the biggest factors in it, because you could be the best coach in the world, but if you don't have that trust between you and the player, then he's not going to open up the opportunity for you to develop.
Dan, you
Talk about your history with Eric a little bit. Did he ever say to you in the past that he had an interest in college and that was in the back of his mind at some point, or how did you know he was gettable?
Before he was with the Rams, I knew he came from college, and me and him, we hang out every offseason. We've talked about it here and there, and I've always known that he's a guy that can coach in the NFL or college, and that if he got the right opportunity, he could succeed at both. So when the opportunity came, I knew a phone call wouldn't hurt. The worst he was going to do was say no.
When you're about recruiting and you're looking to add guys to your roster here at USC, what are maybe some deal breaker traits that these guys need to have as maybe players or people?
Yeah, versatility is huge. Guys that can play in multiple spots. I think when you're looking at high school kids, like depending on the position, like if you're evaluating a high school kid and you're putting him into a bucket as a high school kid, then he's going to have too many limitations when he gets to us. So, for example, like a Mike linebacker, for example, like if we're evaluating a Mike linebacker and we're like, this kid is only a Mike, he can't play anything else, and he's a high school, well, he's probably going to have too many limitations. Whereas if you look at him, you're like, this is a good inside backer. This guy can play Mike, this guy can play Will. Let's just take him and see what he turns into.
How much of that comes from just your personal, background? I mean, playing a bunch of different positions throughout high school and college, and coaching a variety of different roles. How much does that kind of theme of versatility, form your sort of defensive philosophy?
It forms it a lot. I think that I've had to do a good job as far as like taking a back seat and getting a lot of advice from the other guys on staff, because I've had a tough time personally evaluating some high school kids because I was so used to looking at college kids, and you're evaluating kids for the draft. You're drafting guys that you looking to plug and play. You're not drafting a corner that you want to play in 4 years down the road. So that's been an adjustment for me. But the staff's helped me a lot, and it all comes down to really just, what type of athlete is the kid, because all these high schools are doing different schemes. They're playing against different levels of competition. So sometimes it's hard, so you really have to do a good job of just evaluating just the athlete and trying to project, all right, how can that athlete translate into this defense?
But that's good from all over the country and Eric in the NFL. It's been the process of establishing just a recruiting operation and kind of knowing who's doing what and making inroads with the local schools and everything.
The recruiting department, they've done a great job helping us out just because the timing, everything happened so fast. We had to go see the 2024 commits and then the kids that were uncommitted. Then it was seeing all the 25 kids that we've offered. So a lot of it has really just been, them doing a really good job being organized and giving us a good schedule as far as just telling us what we need to do to help us getting caught up. Now that we're caught up, next time we can go on the road as a staff, we should be able to be more involved as far as where we want to go, guys we want to see. But as of now, it's been a lot of change fast. I've just been doing what I'm told.
And in the last 2 weeks, there's been a lot of strong feedback for Eric and just the way he resonates with recruits. What about him is effective in that way, especially when he hasn't been doing the recruiting game at this point?
Before he got to LA, the one thing that everyone said about him when he got there was he was an excellent recruiter in a short time in college. And when he's here and you guys are asking him questions, like that's something that you guys can see immediately. Like he's a guy that can go into any room and he can recruit any kid that gets any school. And that was a big reason why having him here is huge, because not just from a schematic standpoint and a development standpoint, like he's a complete coach. He has NFL background from a development, from a schematic standpoint, but he can recruit at the top of any guys in college.
How many conversations did you and Eric have since you coached together at the Chargers about coaching together again?
We would talk here and there about it, probably about once or twice a year. He would keep tabs on me when I was in Houston and Baltimore. I obviously kept tabs on him at the Rams. And then when I was at UCLA, because in college, you can go visit different NFL teams. In the NFL, you obviously can't do that. So I was able to go up to some OTAs up there with the Rams and be able to see him coach again in person. And just, I thought it was just cool just to see how he's been able to develop some elite players, because it's hard to take an elite player and to develop him over the course of his career.
Did you know Matt Nance or Doug Millen beforehand? How did those connections kind of get established?
I did not. I had heard of them both. Doug, I had heard of when I was in Houston. I was the secondary coach for the Houston Texans when he was the defensive coordinator there. And there's probably 3 or 4 players that he has coached that I coached in the NFL. And the thing that stuck out with Doug was I was just impressed with all the guys that we had, whether it was a draft pick or a free agent. I was just impressed rookie year how prepared all of them were. From a technique standpoint, from a mental standpoint, I always thought that they were well coached. So I was familiar with him, and when we interviewed him, I felt like he'd be a great fit. Coach Yentz, I did not know at all, but obviously I'd heard of him and I'd seen his success. And just sitting down talking ball with him, like he's a football junkie. And I knew having someone with all the experience that he's had, again, like not just at the Division I level, coaching at lower levels as well. And I think that goes into like showing how well he can develop as a coach. I felt like he would be an awesome fit as well.
Coach, I know it's still early here in your tenure, but whether it's been in meeting rooms or in the weight room or just someone from a leadership perspective, which players on defense have impressed you so far?
I want to hold off again. I want to wait until we're in spring ball a couple of weeks before I try to start singling guys out.
Fair enough.
How important is it to find those guys early, though, once you do?
It's important. I think that's one of our goals this spring. You know, we obviously want to find out what our identity is going to be on defense, but you also want to find out about your team. You know, who are those guys in each position group, and then who are those guys overall on the defense? Because after spring ball, you have that gap between spring ball and camp, and a lot of work gets done in that gap. And those guys are the ones who lead that typically.
Last time you spoke with us, you mentioned it was your kind of philosophy as far as having size up front, versatile size that you can play on a variety of downs. And with bringing Eric in, you know, how do you sense that, you know, his sort of understanding will connect with yours in that way, and how he's going to coach the guys up front in your scheme?
Yeah, he's as far as how he coaches the guys up front, you know, he coaches the guys very, very similar to how I've always coached the guys, and there are some differences that I think is going to make our position group even better. And then just from a size standpoint and recruiting standpoint, you know, Eric, he knows what they're supposed to look like. You know, he's been around NFL D lineman for a long time. So when he's going out on the road recruiting these kids, you know, I have full trust just in his evaluation and just his ability to develop.
What did you think of what happened at your former school over the last week? And obviously people were connecting your name and wondering if it was going to be part of that process.
I was just as surprised as everybody else. I did not see that coming at all. But I'm super happy for Deshaun. You know, I got a chance to work with him for a year, obviously. Don't have a bad thing to say about him. I think he's a great person, a great coach. I know all the players are extremely excited about it, as they should be.
How much of this is just kind of a sort of a unique challenge or situation for you, you know, becoming a defensive coordinator? And you might have had this experience at UCLA, bringing in guys who are older, might have had more, you know, coaching experience and that sort of thing, and being the head of that room. How do you see that kind of playing out?
Yeah, I think I just have to just be myself, you know. I just try to be myself every day and then try to surround myself with good people. And at the end of the day, you know, I feel like we have a good group of guys on the staff, whether it's the position coaches, the GAs, the QCs, that just want to play elite defense by any means. You know, there's times where, again, like everyone's had success doing it their own way. So it can be hard at times to do things the way that you haven't done, whether that's me or whether that's a position coach. But at some point in time, all of us have conceded to something, even me, because again, it's not about my way. It's not about Coach Henderson's way, Coach Belk's way, or Ince's way, or Sean Nua's way. It's about our way. And again, the key to that, I think, is just putting the team before your ego. And that's easier said than done, but we have a group of great guys who have been doing that every day so far.
know you're relatively new in college and relatively new as a coordinator. How important was it to get some assistants who have more experience than you and can kind of like lean on them the same way they lean on you?
Super important. You know, we wanted a very diverse staff. You know, there are things about college that are very different than the NFL. And last year, I learned a lot. I'm still going to learn a lot more this year, you know, because there's still some things that I didn't see. So having guys like Coach Belk and Coach Entz, again, who have coordinated, Coach Entz has been a head coach. Having a guy like Coach Nua, I think keeping him on staff was big just because, again, having someone else on staff that's somewhat familiar with the scheme. It's not the exact same scheme that Nua did with Mike McDonald at Michigan, but it's similar. So having someone that just knows where that scheme comes from has helped speed up the process as well.
And you've emphasized that flexibility is a big part of what you're building. But what percentage of the scheme or what you're going to do do you already know? Is it like 80% I know we're doing this, and another 20%?
I would say the majority of the scheme we know what we're going to do, and then once the scheme is set, the scheme has flexibility built in within it to where we can kind of adapt and tweak and go, okay, like how can we take this scheme and cater more towards these players? So you could take the same scheme and we could be here for 5 years in a row, and it might look a little bit different each year, but it's the same scheme.
How much of it do you trace back to Mike McDonald and time?
It's been a little bit of everything. So there's definitely a Baltimore influence. You know, there's definitely a Houston influence. There's a Rex Ryan influence. You know, there's a Gus Bradley influence. And then just from my time at UCLA, you know, there's a Ken Norton influence. There's a Brian Norwood influence. It's really kind of been just a melting pot of ideas from everybody. And I think, you know, over the years, it keeps on evolving and it keeps on changing each year. And, you know, I'm excited to see exactly how that looks this year. You know, we've talked about a handful of coverages so far, and there's already been things that we're doing different this year than we did last year that I'm excited about.
What are the core tenets, though, that you think are consistent?
Excuse me?
What are the core tenets of your scheme that if you were kind of pinned down on it, this is how I would describe it?
Obnoxious communication. You know, we put a big emphasis on communication. Free snap, always knowing what the situation is, down and distance, the personnel, relaying the call, all of our checks. You know, we want to over-communicate. Anything about the offense, the back location, the tight end location. We want to play with shocking effort, you know, every single play. And I think that starts in practice. You know, we want 11 guys sprinting the ball every single play, and we want to attack. We're going to attack the quarterback. We're going to attack the run game. We want to attack the football. You know, from the way we play, from the way the game's called, we want to attack. And those three things, you know, we feel like regardless of what scheme we're doing, that's going to elevate regardless of any scheme it is. And those are also three things that anybody can do. You don't have to be a 5-star. You don't have to be a senior. You know, everyone in our room can do all those things. So I think regardless if it's someone coming to practice, if it's someone watching a game, or if it's an opponent that's scouting us, those are three things that I would want to stick out on tape.
There's been a narrative that Lincoln Riley didn't take defense seriously. And what gave you the confidence to come here and work for him? His
ability to score points on offense. You know, when you're playing defense with an offense like this, you know, that always makes our job a lot easier. But just through our phone and conversations, I can just tell that, you know, he is determined to change that narrative, and he's determined to play elite defense by any means. And I believe him, and I believe in him, and I believe in the staff and all the players, and you know, I'm excited about the opportunity to turn this thing around.
Was part of the decision to coming here knowing that you would be able to also hire the coaches that you wanted? There wouldn't have to be any restrictions financially and so on?
We had talked about that. I wouldn't say that that was a reason why I took the job. You know, I didn't get to bring anyone at UCLA, but by the end of the year, you know, that was one of the closest coaching staffs that I was on. So I love all those coaches a lot. So it's not like I was unhappy with that staff and wanted to work with a different staff. No, that's not the case at all.
You mentioned having learned a lot through the process last year. To what extent did you surprise yourself with the results you were able to get in the dramatic turnaround in just 1 year? And at what point did you realize, hey, this could be a top 10 national defense?
I don't look at rankings. I don't read about myself. I kind of just look at like the next week. And I think it was easier this year than it has been in other years, just because it was so much for me at once, between the recruiting, between coordinating, between managing a staff, between coaching college kids instead of NFL players. There was so much going on that it was very easy for me just to take it one day at a time. And that's literally all I did. It was kind of like one day at a time. And at the end of the year, I looked up and was like, damn, that's how it went.
What are your goals for spring practice? If you accomplish X, you'll be satisfied come April 20th.
We just want to build the strong foundation of the defense. So, we want to introduce the core concepts from a front standpoint and a coverage standpoint. We want to see what we're good at, so we can kind of see, what's kind of the identity of this team going to be, and then we want to see who are the leaders going to be out of this group. And we feel like if we can leave spring knowing, okay, from an identity standpoint, we think that we know we're going to be this type of team, and these are the guys we can count on. I think we'll be in a good spot.
Dan, what did you see in the just the Holiday Bowl in general, and did that give you kind of confidence after seeing the performance of the defense throughout the year, seeing how that changed in the Holiday Bowl, that you were going to have the talent here that you wanted to kind of turn things around?
The biggest thing I saw, the guys were flying around, they were playing fast, they were having fun, and I didn't know exactly what to expect from the game because I'd seen some of the practices before, but you kind of saw that stuff in practice. So I saw them practicing like that. I'm like, this looks pretty good. So I didn't know what to expect in the game, but they played their tails off in the game. They were just having fun and playing hard. So yeah, it definitely made it, coming into this offseason, super exciting.
Let's do one more.
You talked about learning about how to recruit and evaluate high school players. Just what's been the biggest challenge about that and learning that part of evaluating?
When you're evaluating guys for the draft, for the most part, you're looking for guys that are going to come play for you right now. A lot of times when you're evaluating high school kids, they're kids. And sometimes you're evaluating sophomores, so you're really, truly projecting. You're trying to project what type of player can this kid be. And it's just something that I hadn't had the experience doing. So it's been great for me just to watch a ton of tape, to spend a lot of time with our staff, to get their input on players, to hear their stories about players that they've recruited that panned out, that didn't pan out, and why. So I just think, the longer I do it, the more I do it, the better at it I'll get.
Thank you, Coach Lynn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.